They never called it what it was. We weren't told anything really, just that it was an opportunity to serve in a classified defense operation. I was young, proud, and obedient, just like they wanted. I had barely turned 21 when I signed the last piece of paper they gave me, full of blank spaces and ink that bled. There were others with me, mostly men who looked like me, brown skin, foreign names. We joked on the bus ride, nervous but naive. None of us noticed that the officers giving orders never removed their gloves. I still remember the metallic taste in the air. It wasn't smoke and it wasn't steam. It was something else, something heavy. And they knew exactly what it would do to us. The room they brought us to smelled like damp paper and old sweat. A ceiling fan turned lazily overhead, doing nothing to cut the heat. Rows of folding chairs faced a projector screen that flickered with a blue hue, waiting for the film to start. I sat near the back, trying to ignore the itch at the base of my neck where my uniform rubbed raw. It was standard issue. Too tight in the shoulders, too loose at the waist. Nothing about it felt made for me. A man in a clean white coat walked in, holding a clipboard. He didn't smile, he didn't even look at us, just cleared his throat and started reading. "You have been selected for a specialized training exercise," he said flatly, like he'd said it 100 times before. "You will be participating in atmospheric testing designed to simulate potential combat conditions. Your cooperation is expected. Your results will be invaluable." The words felt hollow, rehearsed. None of us spoke. A few shifted in their seats, glancing at each other. I could see a guy 2 rows ahead scribbling something in a notebook, but he stopped the moment the projector clicked on. The room dimmed. The reel buzzed to life. Images of open fields, men in gas masks marching through clouds of mist. "Chemical defense," the narrator boomed. "To protect our troops, we must first understand the enemy's tools." The mist was yellow, thick, slow. It looked like fog, but wrong. Too heavy, like it had intent. There were no screams in the film, only order, men walking upright through danger, men obeying. Then it cut. Black screen, silence. The lights flickered back on, and the man with the clipboard stepped forward again. "Tomorrow morning, you'll be divided into groups and assigned different gear. Your cooperation ensures the safety of future soldiers." Dismissed. That was it. No questions, no names, no explanation. On our way out, we passed a cart stacked with small glass canisters. Some were cracked. I didn't know what they were then. Now I can still smell the faint sharpness of their contents when I close my eyes. Back in the barracks, I sat on my bunk and tried to process what we had just seen. One of the guys, Jenkins, laughed and said, "Looks like we're the guinea pigs." He meant it as a joke, but no one laughed with him. Not really. It hung in the air like a bad smell. I kept thinking about that yellow mist, how it curled around the men in the footage, clinging to them like fingers, and how none of their faces were visible, just masks, always masks. Before lights out, a soldier came through with a clipboard and called out names. Mine was third. "Group C," he said. "Report to Hangar 12 at DO 500. I didn't sleep much. The bed springs creaked every time I moved. The heat pressed down on my chest. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw that cloud again. Yellow, reaching, alive. Morning came fast, too fast. I dressed in silence, boots stiff from yesterday's sweat. The sky outside was grey, like it hadn't made up its mind yet. We marched across the compound in silence, past hangars and gates and towers with glass eyes watching from above. Hangar 12 was larger than I expected, cold, sterile. Rows of lockers lined the walls, each marked with a letter. Inside mine was a thin rubber suit, black and wrinkled like it had been folded for years. A mask, gloves, no instructions. A man stood at the front of the room, clipboard in hand, always a clipboard. He didn't introduce himself. "Put on the gear, move into the prep room." We obeyed. The rubber clung to my skin, sealing me in. The mask was tight, the straps biting into my scalp. I could hear my own breath, loud, shaky, unnatural. Through a narrow window, I saw the chamber. It looked like a shipping container lined in metal, a single door, no windows. Someone behind me whispered, "God help us." But I don't think he was there, because when that door opened and I saw the mist already swirling inside, I stepped forward, and no one stopped me. The moment my boots touched the metal floor of the chamber, the temperature dropped. Not enough to make me shiver, but just enough to feel like something had changed, like the air itself had stopped trusting me. The mist moved low, like fog with a memory. It curled around my ankles, thick and slow, carrying a sting that reached me even through the suit. There were 4 of us inside. No one spoke. You could hear everything, the press of rubber against skin, the hiss of breath inside masks, the soft clank of boots on metal. We stood in a square, exactly where they had marked with yellow tape. Yellow, like the cloud itself. The door closed behind us with a heavy thud that echoed longer than it should have. A red light blinked in the corner of the ceiling. Then came the sound, a low hum, mechanical, building slowly. My ears popped. Something hissed through the vents, subtle at first, then sharper, and then it hit. The first breath didn't hurt. It was just warm, sharp at the edges. The second made my throat tighten. The third burned. My skin, even beneath the suit, began to prickle like I was standing under a sun lamp I couldn't see. I blinked, and tears welled up. Not from emotion, but from some automatic response, my body trying to flush something out. Someone coughed, a dry, rattling sound muffled by their mask. Another stumbled backward, bumping into the wall. The tape beneath our feet was already disappearing beneath the thickening mist. There were speakers in the corners, and a voice came through, calm, detached. Remain in position. Exposure time, 20 minutes. 20. My lungs were already aching by the 5th. I tried to focus on something else. Jenkins was across from me. I recognized the shape of his shoulders. He was gripping his mask with both hands like it might fall off. Behind him, the mist had turned more golden, almost like light was passing through it. But there were no lights in the chamber. Just that red blinking dot, still pulsing. Each second dragged. Time didn't move normally in there. It pulsed, stretched, fractured. My thoughts began to slow, thick like syrup. I remembered something my mother once said when I was a boy, that the worst kind of pain wasn't sharp, but quiet, lingering. The kind that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. I could feel that kind now. 10 minutes in, my left glove began to leak. Just a little. A seam near the base of the thumb. I felt the burn instantly. Like acid on the skin, but deeper, like it was reaching for the nerves. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't dare draw attention to it. Somewhere, someone was watching, taking notes. The voice returned. Remain still, as if we had any other option. The burn crept up my wrist, a slow invasion. I clenched my hand into a fist, trying to stop it. My vision blurred, my head spun. 15 minutes. I thought I saw movement in the mist. Not from the others, something else. Like the fog itself had started to form shapes. I knew it was the gas or the stress or the heat building in my skull, but I swear, for just a second, it looked like someone was standing beside me. Not one of us. Taller, still. Then Jenkins collapsed. He didn't fall hard, more like folded, knees first, then shoulders. His mask hit the floor with a soft thud. He stayed there, twitching. None of us moved. The voice didn't come back. The light kept blinking. The gas kept flowing. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. At exactly 20 minutes, the door opened again with a violent hiss. Cold air rushed in. A shadow waved us out. We stepped over Jenkins. They didn't help him. They didn't even look at him. And when I turned to glance back, the mist swallowed his body whole, like he'd never been there at all. They didn't let us speak once we left the chamber. A soldier pointed to a hallway, and we followed it like ghosts. Our suits stuck to our skin, damp and burning from the inside. The rubber creaked with every step, like it had aged a decade in 20 minutes. I couldn't tell if the smell clinging to me came from the chamber or from my own body. But it followed me. It still does. They led us to a decontamination room with tiled walls, a grated floor, and hoses hanging like limp serpents from the ceiling. Another man in white stood waiting, goggles over his eyes. He didn't acknowledge us, just flipped a switch. The water came down hard, cold at first, then scalding. My skin screamed beneath the suit. I couldn't tell if it was the water, the gas, or something else inside me. My left hand pulsed with pain. The glove had swelled where the leak had been, like it was trying to hide the damage. I kept my arm down, afraid they'd see. One by one, they pulled us aside and stripped the suits off with long tongs, like we were contaminated meat. The air hit my body like sandpaper. Every inch of exposed skin tingled, burned, throbbed. When they removed my glove, I turned away instinctively. But I saw it anyway. The flesh on my thumb was blistered and raw, the skin peeling like wet paper. No one said a word. The man in goggles made a note on his clipboard, then he handed me a towel. Jenkins was gone. No explanation, no mention. The other two from my group were ushered through a different door, and I was taken alone to a small white room with a metal bench. A single light bulb flickered above. A camera in the corner blinked red. I sat, wrapped in the towel, dripping. My fingers trembled. The door opened, and another officer walked in, older, with medals on his chest that looked polished but unearned. He sat across from me, folded his hands, and looked directly into my eyes. "You did well," he said. I didn't respond. "You followed protocol, maintained formation. That kind of discipline is noted." Still, I said nothing. He pulled a folder from under his arm and placed it on the table between us. I could see my name on the tab, stamped in bold. Underneath, faint but visible, the words Test Group C, Exposure Trial 7. "You'll rest for 72 hours. After that, we'll reassess." I finally found my voice. "What was in the gas?" He tilted his head like I'd asked something impolite. "We refer to it as Substance Y. You don't need to worry about the specifics." My eyes narrowed. "Is Jenkins alive?" He didn't answer, just stood up, took the folder and walked out. The door locked behind him with a click I felt in my spine. The next 3 days passed in a fog thicker than the gas had been. My room had no windows. Meals came through a slot in the wall. A nurse came once a day to apply ointment to my hand, always silent, always gloved. The burn darkened, the skin blackened, the smell got worse. I began to feel it in my throat, like it was coming from inside me. I started having dreams, or something close to them. I saw the mist curling through the barracks, creeping under the doors. I saw faces forming in the cloud, half-formed and melting. I heard footsteps pacing outside my room at night, stopping just short of the door. On the 4th day, they moved me. Another hallway, another room. This one had mirrors on 2 sides. I didn't need to be told they were watching. The air was dry. My lungs rattled when I breathed. I looked at my reflection and saw a stranger. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin yellow at the edges. I had aged. Or maybe I had been erased. They gave me a new uniform, same size, same stiff fabric. A fresh mask sat on the bench beside it. The door opened. A new voice called out, "Group D, prepare for exposure." And I realized then, they hadn't brought me back to recover. They had brought me back to go in again. There was no protest, no refusal. Something in me had cracked and settled. I dressed in silence, sliding the fabric over skin that still pulsed with heat. The mask felt heavier this time, tighter, like it had learned my shape and didn't want to let go. Group D assembled quietly. 5 of us, lined up like statues, each clinging to a small hope that maybe this time would be different. I didn't recognize any of the faces, but they looked like I had days ago. Uncertain, curious, unbroken. They still believed this was a test or a drill, that someone would explain everything soon, that someone was watching to protect them. I kept my eyes forward. The chamber looked the same dull steel, same yellow tape. The mist was absent for now, but I could feel it, like a memory hiding in the corners, waiting to be summoned. A voice over the intercom repeated the words we already knew. Remain in position. Exposure time. 20 minutes. We stepped inside, and they closed the door. There was no warning this time, no hum, no countdown, just a sudden sharp hiss, like a snake exhaling. And then the cloud bloomed from the ceiling vents, blooming like smoke from a dying fire. It reached us fast. Faster than before, coiling up our legs and chests, climbing into our mouths through the filters. My lungs rejected the first breath violently. I bent forward, coughing into the mask, but the mist pushed deeper. The heat returned instantly. Not like before. This time, it bit. The others began to shift, twitching in place. One reached for his face, panicking. His gloves fumbled with the straps of the mask, pulling, tugging. I wanted to scream at him to stop, but my voice was swallowed. His mask came off. The gas met his face in a rush, and I saw his skin begin to welt in real time. His eyes widened, then vanished behind tears that refused to fall. He collapsed. No one moved to help him, not because we didn't care, but because we knew. Instinctively, deeply, we knew. Moving meant attention. Attention meant consequence, and they were watching. The tape on the floor vanished beneath the gas. My boots stuck slightly with each step, or maybe I imagined that. I stared forward, breathing in fire. My thoughts felt sticky, delayed. I thought of my brother's laugh, the one I hadn't heard since I left. I thought of my father's hands, calloused from years in the fields. I thought of my mother's rosary and how she used to grip it when she prayed for protection. There was no protection here. A sharp sound cut through the chamber, a scream, hoarse and jagged. One of the men was thrashing now, swinging his arms blindly. He hit the wall, then fell, convulsing. That made two. The rest of us held position, muscles locked, eyes wide. I could feel something leaking from my nose. I hoped it was sweat. But when I blinked, I saw the droplets on my visor, amber-colored, thick, wrong. I began to count in my head, not seconds, breaths. 1, inhale. 2, exhale. 3, inhale. 4, exhale. Each breath slower, heavier, like dragging a stone uphill. When the red light above the door blinked once, I thought for a moment they were going to let us out. I turned slightly, hopeful. But the door didn't open. Instead, a speaker crackled. Group D exposure extended, 10 additional minutes. I stopped breathing altogether. 10 more minutes in that tomb, 10 more minutes in the cloud that peeled skin like bark, that set fire to the inside of your chest. Someone sobbed. Someone else fell. I couldn't look anymore. I focused on the corner where the wall met the floor. A small black stain marked the edge, like something had burned and been scrubbed away. I stared at it, locked my mind to it, made it my anchor. I didn't move. I didn't think. I became a shape, a presence. I became silence. And then, just before the 20 became 30, just before the gas claimed a fourth man, just before I lost my grip entirely, the door opened. They didn't say a word. They didn't help the fallen. They pointed, and like an obedient machine, I walked out, still burning, still breathing, but no longer whole. The second decontamination didn't feel like cleansing. It felt like burial. The water hit harder this time, needles of heat stabbing at skin already wounded. My hand, the one with the burn from the first trial, had swollen to the point I couldn't close my fingers. Blisters had spread across my palm, forming a fragile map of pain. The medic who saw it didn't flinch. He only jotted something in his notes, then moved on. They gave me silence again. A small room, same as before. Metal bench, one towel, one uniform, no mirror, no questions. I sat there for hours, staring at the blank wall, watching it pulse with colors that weren't there. I couldn't tell if it was from the gas or the blood rising behind my eyes. Every few minutes, I would catch my breath turning shallow, like my lungs had forgotten how to expand. I pressed my back against the wall and tried to breathe slower, deeper, but the air never seemed to go far enough. It stopped in my throat, lodged there like a stone. I started hearing things, not voices. Not yet. It began as footsteps, soft ones, just outside the door, then dragging sounds like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Sometimes I thought I heard the squeak of a gurney wheel, just once, followed by nothing at all. I pressed my ear to the wall and held my breath, waiting, but there was only silence, until one night I woke to find the room dimmer than usual, the bulb overhead flickering erratically. The food tray slot was open, though no one had come. A stale piece of bread and a cup of water sat untouched. But there was something else, a file. It was slid halfway through the slot, thin and creased at the edges, as if it had been handled too many times. I picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were photographs, black and white, men standing in formation, masks on, a timestamp in the corner. I recognized the chamber, the yellow tape, the fog. On the next page, the same men, 20 minutes later, masks off, skin blistered, eyes swollen shut. One of them on the ground, mouth open mid-scream. I turned the page. There I was, standing in Group C, staring directly at the camera. My eyes were wide, unblinking. Something about them looked wrong. Not fear, not pain, vacant. The caption beneath it read, Subject 3C, moderate neurological response, severe dermal reaction, candidate for reintegration. I dropped the file. My heart punched against my ribs, a sound louder than anything I had heard in days. I kicked the folder away, sending the pages across the floor, but the faces followed me. They stared up from the tiles, mouths open, eyes burned, unseen and forgotten. I screamed, not out of pain. That had become familiar. I screamed because I finally understood something I hadn't let myself believe. This wasn't training. This wasn't defense. We were the weapon. They were testing how long we'd last, how long until the fog crawled not just into the skin, but into the soul, how long until men stopped being men and became numbers, reactions, charts. Later that night, I heard my name called. No knocking, no keys, just a voice through the wall, calm and detached. Subject 3C, prepare for reassignment. Reassignment. I laughed then. A dry, cracked sound. It echoed around the room and came back broken. My hand throbbed in rhythm with my heart. My thoughts curled inward like smoke, thick and poisoned. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat on the bench, blinking slowly, waiting for the door to open. And I knew it would, because once you've walked into the yellow mist, you don't walk out. You carry it with you. And soon enough, it begins to speak. The door opened at dawn, not with a command or a soldier's bark, but with a slow electric hum, like the building itself had made the decision. A nurse stepped in, her face partially hidden behind a surgical mask, her eyes outlined in dark circles like bruises she wasn't allowed to name. She motioned for me to stand. I did. The hallway was different this time, not the route to the chambers. This one sloped downward, the lights flickering less from disrepair and more from design. There were no windows, no numbers on the doors, just grey, endless, suffocating grey. They brought me into a large room lined with glass walls, observation stations. Inside, men in white coats scribbled into notebooks, some with headphones, others watching grainy footage of men gasping behind glass. In the center of the room there were chairs, 10 of them, heavy steel, each bolted to the floor, each equipped with restraints. 2 were already occupied. The men strapped in didn't scream. They didn't move. Their eyes were open, but they didn't blink. Their heads tilted slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. I wasn't strapped in. They didn't need to. I sat on the floor in the corner and watched. That's all they wanted now. Someone to witness. One of the technicians approached with a tablet. He crouched beside me and showed me the screen. It displayed a waveform, tight, frantic, like a heart trying to outrun its own death. "This is you yesterday," he said. "You were spiking almost off the chart. Right here," he tapped, "hallucinations, confusion, full break in linear processing." He smiled like a proud parent. "This means it's working." I didn't ask what it was. He left the tablet with me. I stared at the lines for hours, trying to see myself in them, but the longer I looked, the more it began to feel like those lines weren't measuring me. They were measuring something trying to come through me, something crawling. That night I dreamed of smoke, not mist, not gas, smoke with intention. It slithered down corridors, under skin, behind eyes. It whispered in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood. It showed me images, not of war, but of experiments stacked on top of each other like bodies in a trench. Different faces, same suits, same tape on the floor, same blinking red light, always blinking. I woke to find my hand bandaged again, but thicker now, tighter. I tried to remove it, but it pulsed against me, as if it had grown roots. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else, something charred. One of the strapped-down men began to speak, at first just a murmur, then words. They said I was chosen. His eyes rolled back. Said I'd help protect the others. He laughed, a wet, rattling laugh. Then silence. The lights flickered. The technicians didn't move. The cameras didn't blink. They were waiting for me now, not to leave, to become. Later, they brought in another man, younger than me, trembling, his uniform still crisp. He looked at me with panic, as if I might explain what was happening. I couldn't. They put him in the chair beside the others. I watched as the fog crept from the ceiling vents. Not yellow this time, but clear, invisible. He began to scream within seconds, but it wasn't the scream of someone afraid. It was the scream of recognition, like he had seen something that proved every fear he'd ever had was real. And I realized they weren't testing the gas anymore. They were testing us, to see when the smoke would stop being something they released and start being something we exhaled. When the screaming stopped, I felt a stillness in the room, a kind of reverence, like whatever they'd been waiting for had arrived. And for the first time since I entered this place, I understood I was no longer one of the subjects. I was the product. They stopped locking the door, not because they trusted me, because they didn't need to. I didn't leave the room anymore. The thought of walking those halls again, of seeing another chamber, another face melt behind glass. It felt distant, like a memory I wasn't sure belonged to me. I slept when the lights allowed it, ate when the tray came, watched the camera blink, and I waited. One morning, they brought me new clothes. Not a uniform, civilian. Clean, folded, my name printed on a plastic tag, attached to a folder I wasn't allowed to open. A voice on the intercom spoke for the first time in days. "You're being discharged." I didn't understand the words at first. They felt like a test, a hallucination. But when the door slid open and I saw two men in suits standing outside, waiting to escort me, I stood. My knees cracked, unsure. My skin beneath the bandages itched like it was no longer mine. The sun burned my eyes. I hadn't seen it in weeks, maybe longer. I didn't ask what day it was. One of the men handed me sunglasses and a bus ticket. "You'll be going home," he said, like that meant something. "You've been cleared, decontaminated." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. They took me to a station on the edge of a city I didn't recognize, gave me a bag with a change of clothes, a few dollars, a government-issued letter thanking me for my service. No name, no seal, just a stamp, confidential clearance, Class 4, completed. As the bus pulled away, I stared out the window. People walked by like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't been burning behind their backs this whole time. I watched a mother push a stroller past a corner where men smoked in the shade. The haze from their cigarettes drifted in the breeze, curling toward the sky. It smelled too familiar. When I got back to my town, if you could still call it that, things weren't the same. My old job at the shipping yard was gone. My parents didn't answer the letters I sent. My neighbors avoided my eyes. One man, someone I vaguely remembered from high school, called me the ghost. I didn't deny it. The nightmares didn't stop. They changed. They softened at the edges but grew heavier in the center. Sometimes I'd dream of the chamber again, but now I was on the other side of the glass, clipboard in hand, watching someone else tremble in my place. Other nights, I dreamed I was breathing something in. Not gas, not smoke, but people. Like the fog had trapped voices, screams, prayers, regrets, and carried them with it until I opened my mouth to receive them. I woke each time with the same taste on my tongue, burnt salt. One day I visited the clinic for a routine checkup. I hadn't meant to. My hands had begun to shake, and I wanted to know if something inside me was failing. They ran blood work, scans, urine samples. The nurse called in a doctor. The doctor asked questions I didn't have answers for. Any recent chemical exposure? No. Any contact with foreign materials? No! He stared at the chart for a long time before saying anything else, then quietly, "You're clean, but your system doesn't behave like it." What does that mean? He looked up, unsure how to phrase it. You metabolize differently now. You hold things in longer. I left before he could explain further. That night, I stood in the bathroom and stared at myself for hours. The mirror fogged with my breath. I traced the steam with my fingers, watching the outline fade. My skin didn't blister anymore. It shimmered, faintly, and sometimes when I exhaled against the cold glass, the fog didn't disappear. It stayed, hung there, waiting, just like me. I stopped opening the windows. Some days, I swear the air outside leans against the glass, trying to find its way back in. I keep the lights low, the mirror covered. I no longer dream, at least not in ways that sleep can explain. People avoid me now, even without knowing why. Animals too. I walk down streets and shadows pull away. I laugh sometimes, but it doesn't sound like me. Not anymore. They said I was clean. They said I was safe, but they never came back to check. And I've started hearing it again, that low hiss just beneath silence, the one that comes before the mist, before the thoughts that aren't mine creep in and make themselves comfortable. I can feel them sometimes, standing just behind my breath. And if you're listening to this, maybe you would too.